everyone. My name is Denise Barron. I am the head of Insight for the party. And as part of my role as head of Insight, I've worked on all of the research behind our messaging. You might have heard about Demand Better, the new slogan. And the next 15 minutes of this little webinar video thing are designed to help you use the slogan, use the messaging framework to demand better, to be on message, to get a more positive response from voters, and to be able to organize everything that we're doing, all the different issues that we're working on, into one cohesive message. So just by way of introduction, in addition to messaging research and whatnot, I also do the polling for the party. I oversee basically anything that has massive amounts of data feeding into it. So what we did in order to build this specific research project was we took a look at a couple different classic Lib Dem, classic liberal values. And we tested those as broad message frames to see which one would come through as the best, which one would actually inspire voters to look at us a new way, to feel like they had a better understanding of us, and even to hopefully be more likely to vote for us as well. And we saw consistency that this message of fairness that I'll go through, this kind of broader umbrella message of fairness, we saw consistently across the board that this is the absolute best framework for us. It increases all of the positive attitudes towards us that we're looking to increase, and it does the heavy lifting for us. And so what we've done with developing this message frame and the slogan is we've put it into an easy-to-use framework for you. And one more thing that I'll mention as well is that this might be a little bit different than the way that you've done messaging previously. I think a lot of campaigns, I'm from the US, so a lot of American campaigns and a lot of British campaigns have sort of been structured around a messaging framework that says you must use these 12 words all the time, no other 12 words, that's it. That's not really what this is about. This is a little bit different from that. In fact, I dare say, it's even a little bit more liberal in its approach. It's saying, here's a broad framework, and we encourage you guys to use the issues and use the specific wording that works best for you. Of course, we're very enthusiastic about the new slogan, Demand Better, so we do encourage you to use that. So what does this framework mean? What do you say to the voters who ask, why should I vote Lib Dem? Well, we've organized this into four buckets, to four categories. There is a natural order to it. I'll go through each of these boxes in order. But one thing I want to emphasize at the very front is that you're able to sort of emphasize different aspects of this with different messaging tools that you have, or emphasize different aspects of this messaging frame when it's more relevant to this issue or to that issue. So don't feel like this is a very, very, strict order of ways that you need to think about it and talk about it, but instead it's a broader framework that you can use flexibly to meet the right purpose. So first, overall, I'll just go over this very broad framework very briefly overall, and then we're going to dig into each of these four quadrants. So first of all, it is always important, it is always necessary that we start out with the voter. We say, we hear you, we know that this is a problem, that this is an injustice, and we're angry about it as well. We're dissatisfied with it as well. There is a specific type of problem here that works especially well for us, and these are the problems that highlight real injustices. And I'll get in more to some specific examples of that later on, but broadly it's saying that people are working harder than ever. People are doing absolutely everything that they can in order to build a good life. But for millions of people across the country, that's just not possible, and that's not their reality. So starting out with the voters who say, we hear you, that there's this injustice. You're giving, and the government's taking and not giving back. There's a real breakdown. Next up, we want to talk about how it got this way. So the second step is saying, who's to blame? And spoiler alert, it's usually the Tories. But every now and then, it also can be labor, especially like if you're somewhere where there's a labor-run council. It can also be more societal injustice. It can be socioeconomic inequality. It can be, the gap between the rich and the poor. It can be the gap between opportunities for the young and the old. It can be all sorts of broad injustice. It can be tax dodgers and greedy corporations. You can have your pick, but the important thing is to lead people from the problem to how it got that way. And then the third step, which is very important, is talking about how we, the liberal Democrats, are the solution. Why our fundamental values have provide people with the solution that they need to this problem. So there's two real values that you want to emphasize in this area. We'll go into it in more detail in a minute. But broadly, it's that sense of fairness, and secondly, it's being more future oriented, more forward looking. So depending on the specific issue that you're looking at, it might be more important to emphasize that we've always been the party to stand up to power and privilege, to provide opportunities for everyone, that sense of fairness, or it might be more important to emphasize that we've always been the party that's looking out for the future, and we're not backward looking, we're always forward looking. So it depends on what you're doing there, but that's where there's a little bit of dynamics. But the key thing is that we're making it clear that the party, the Liberal Democrats, are the solution to the problem that you've highlighted at the very beginning. The fourth step is bringing it right back to the voter, because obviously that's who we're always focused on, whether or not you're talking to someone on the doorstep, or a reporter, or you're writing a leaflet, or you're doing social media content, or you're writing an email to supporters. At the end of the day, the messaging is all geared towards getting to that voter. So you want to bring it back to them, and you want to say how their life gets better. How would their life be improved by having a Lib Dem MP, Lib Dem council, Lib Dem counselor, or just even having their say by voting Lib Dem. What did they get out of it? What's the benefit to them? So let's go into each of these in a little bit more detail. So like I said, you always want to start out with the problem. You want to build that clear idea. You want to paint that picture of the injustice that exists. And fundamentally, the one that we know works the best for us right now is emphasizing that things are not working as they should at the moment. That plenty of us are working hard, we pay our taxes, we're doing our part, and yet for far, far too many people, they're not actually able to get a good wage or to afford a home or to generally build a good life. And that's simply not how it should be. Like I said before, this is all about emphasizing the lack of give and take. You know, people are giving it their all. They're doing absolutely everything that they can. And in response, they're getting nothing. You know, things are harder than they've ever been, and that's just simply not how it should be. So that is the broader overall thing, but you can put this down to something more simple, or more specific rather, for instance, on education. You can say that, you know, I live in Camden, so we in Camden, we're paying our taxes. We are doing everything that we're supposed to. We pay our council tax, we pay our national tax, we're putting in what we're supposed to, we're working hard, and in return, we're getting crowded classrooms and insufficient support for our kids at the schools, and that's not how it should be. We're doing what we're supposed to, and we're not getting the educational support that we deserve. So next, how it got this way. So this is where you need to lead people along this story. You've got the problem, and then the next step of the story is how it got this way. Who's to blame? Whose fault is this? And like I said, often the Tories. But Labor, the SNP, offer very, very good bogeymen in this situation, as do kind of broader systemic agents, greedy corporations, tax dodgers, wealth inequality, etc. And this is something that you don't necessarily need to bang on about. You don't need to go on and on and on. But helping people follow the story by taking it to this next step is a very helpful thing. Our brains are hardwired in order to find reasons behind something. We fundamentally are always looking for the causes of why there is a problem. So if you connect with them, and if you connect with that general basic impulse and put them on the track that we want them to be on, put them on that narrative, then you're guiding them along the right story, and you're telling them how awful, you know, your opponent, the Tories or Labor or the SNP are. Like I said, this third step is almost as important as the first one of highlighting the problem, but it's a very, very necessary one to come after highlighting the problem. But we want to say that we are the only party that's demanding better. We're the only party that stands up to power and privilege to bring back fairness and opportunity for everyone else, for the rest of us. And we will build a better country where everyone has the opportunity to build a better life. We'll be the voice for the millions of voters who feel powerless and frustrated at the direction our country is taking us. So this is all about emphasizing who we are, what we'll do, and you can get specific here. You can say, so for instance, again, if we're going back to education, we can say the Lib Dems are the only party that's demanding better schools. We are the only party that has a serious approach to actually funding our local schools, because we've always been the party that's looking out for the future. We don't get tangled up in internal bickering and backward-looking policies. Instead, we're always looking out for the future, and we're building a better future for everyone. So this can be adjusted to either focus on that fairness or focus on the future. Either way, it works really well. And lastly, bring it back to the voter. It's all about the voter. Bring it back to their life, how they benefit. And this last step is especially powerful when you can make it very, very specific. You can do kind of broader things about how, like, with the Lib Dems in charge, our community would be better off. You can say these bigger things. It's still a good way to end this story. But when you can be more specific, like, you know, our kids would have a better future because there would be X number of pounds more per pupil in each school with the Lib Dem plan. Or our hospitals would be able to give better care because we've been infusing X number of pounds into our local clinics. You can rearrange it in different ways so that you are giving, this is where you have that specific benefit to the local community. So I want to mention broadly the issues that people care about, because obviously you guys all know exactly what local issues are the most important in your areas, and so we totally encourage you to use this messaging framework around those local issues. It's really, really powerful, and I'll go through a couple examples on that. But in terms of national issues, consistently the most important, the biggest issues that people care about are Brexit, the NHS, jobs, the economy, immigration, and crime. From those, you know that Brexit, the NHS, jobs, and the economy are things that we talk about a lot as a party, and especially as well, I'd add into that one education. Education's always kind of like bubbling up around the same areas like crime. It kind of depends on the way you phrase the question, yada yada. You know, so here's an example of a graph over the last couple of years, you know, actually almost the last decade, of how these different issues have popped up and how they've been more at the forefront of people's minds. And as you can see, Brexit's just been consistently really top of mind, and occasionally, especially when the NHS has been in crisis, then the NHS pops up as an important one. But we encourage you to use this message framework around any issue that you want to talk about, and the most important thing that you're doing is not just talking about an issue, you're putting it into these 4 steps. So again, I'll use an example actually that I heard from a local party when I was doing a training of how they're going to use this message framework around a local issue. So the local issue that they highlighted was youth unemployment. And basically the way that they put it, the way that they highlighted that fundamental injustice at the very beginning is they said, we have young people in our communities who are working hard in school, in secondary school, getting their A-levels, some are going off to university, some are getting job training, vocational training, and yet at the end of the day, there's not a job there for them, or if there is a job, it's a really low-wage job that doesn't offer them a good future. Our kids and our youth of our community are doing everything that they're supposed to build a good life, and in return, they don't have the opportunities that they really should, and that's simply not right. That's not the way it should be. And then next, when they talk about how it got this way, this group of people were in a Tory-facing place, and so they said how those gosh darn Tories are at it again. Their austerities, their cuts to different public services, their cuts to schools, just make it so that it's that much harder for young people to find opportunities. Their cuts to basic public services like job training and whatnot makes it that much harder for young people to get ahead and build a good life. And third, it's that the Lib Dems are the solution. So again, in this specific example, the local party was interested in recommitting funding to a youth center. And so basically, what they said is that the Lib Dems are the solution because we will reinvest in that youth center and we will reinvest in our community's youth. We will be looking out for the future and we'll be looking out for the next generation by supporting them with the community center that they need. And then fourth, how the voters' lives get better, how the community gets better. It's all about the fact that the Lib Dems are the party who are fighting to reinvest in this youth center, and that is going to benefit the local economy, because if more people can participate in the local economy, the better everyone does. It will decrease unemployment rates. It'll give people's kids, or maybe themselves, the skills that they need to go out and look for jobs. So that's how you apply that message framework to that specific example that I heard from a local party. There's another one too that comes to mind, another local example. When I was doing this training at conference, there was a local party that basically had a specific story where a lollipop lady had lost her job because of funding cuts. So when they applied this message framework to that story, it turns out, sounding a little bit more like, you deserve the best public services for yourself and for your kids. You're doing your part, you're paying your local taxes, and in return that means that you expect to have people who are going to be looking out for your kids and keeping them safe. But what's happened is this beloved local lollipop lady, who everyone loved and everyone knew, she's lost her job now. How did it get this way? It got this way because the Tories cut the budget. This dang Tories again. They cut the budget, and then she lost her job. So obviously, connecting on that next step. Third, the Lib Dems want to reinvest in our public services. We are so focused on the future that we understand we need to keep our kids safe at every step of their education, and that means making sure that we have the right people in place to look out for them and to look out for the future. And your life gets better because, people like this lollipop lady are there to look after your kids. You know that when you're sending them to school, they're going to be looked after. And when we're investing in people like this, the whole community is improved. So that's another kind of specific example that illustrates a fundamental injustice at the beginning, a reason how it got there, why we're the solution, and how the community benefits if we were in charge. That basically wraps it up. Like I said at the beginning, this is a fairly loose framework. We're not really strict about always making sure that you use a specific iteration of words. It's more important about the story that you're telling and about the fundamental injustice that you're highlighting at the beginning, and that you are emphasizing that we're the solution, that we are the party that focuses on fairness, and that we stand up to power and privilege. Those are the really key essential parts. The last bit of advice I'll mention is that we found in doing training for different people, different spokespeople, that a rhetorical device that's well used in that third step about how the Lib Dems are the solution is, you can say, Britain deserves better, Cornwall deserves better, Camden deserves better, and the Liberal Democrats demand better. So it helps you to sort of bridge the gap between talking about the problem and how it got this way over to why we're the solution, because we deserve better, and the Liberal Democrats, we're the party that demands better. The last thing I'll mention is that we have two lovely, wonderful resources that accompany this video for getting you all trained up and functioning on the messaging. So one is a handout that basically looks exactly like the diamond with the 4 squares. You can print that out if you like. You can hang it on your wall. You can use it far and wide. It is a tool for you just to remind you of how to stay on message. When you're writing leaflets, when you're writing emails, it's just a useful thing to remind you of, like, okay, cool, we need to start out with the problem, then we need to do this, then we need to do that. And then the other resource that we have for you is a worksheet that has been designed for training. So you can download that and go through this broad message framework with your team, and then go ahead and apply it, write it out to how a specific local issue or even a broad national issue can be fit within this framework here. So those are there for you to use. They'll be available online, and just thanks for tuning in. Good luck. Demand better. Bye-bye.